We will begin.
And I'll share the screen. The recording will take a little longer to get out this time. I'll probably not be able to do it until I get home tomorrow.
Not a worry. Did you always have bangs, V? I don't remember. For some reason, you look different tonight.
I'm getting a haircut tomorrow. It's well overdue for a haircut. Usually it's not this. It's in my way. It's annoying.
You and Joey are now showing off.
But I did. There was a stage there where I was just grabbing all. It was all just long.
I was covering for a second.
Yeah. See, Joey teases me because he's got such great hair and I don't. And so when he wears it like that, it makes me very envious. So I shall not envy my brother.
That's right.
All right.
Okey-dokey.
We're on number 12.
Oh. You want me to give it a go?
Sure.
Okay.
Go for it.
Gotta yawn first. Okay. Of your ego, you can do nothing to save yourself or others. But of your spirit, you can do everything for the salvation of both. Humility is a lesson for the ego, not for the spirit. Spirit is beyond humility because it recognizes its radiance and gladly sheds its light everywhere. The meek shall inherit the earth because their egos are humble, and this gives them truer perception. The kingdom of heaven is the spirit's right, whose beauty and dignity are far beyond doubt, beyond perception, and stand forever as the mark of the love of God for his creations, who are wholly worthy of him and only him. Nothing else is sufficiently worthy to be a gift for a creator of God himself. Wow. That makes me feel very important. Do we need to debrief this at all? Or for me, it's pretty clear. Maybe we should just kind of, when we come to these kind of paragraphs, say what we got out of it, because that may help us all like generalize the meaning. Does anybody want to give it a go on what they got from this?
It definitely contrasts for me the difference between being humble and coming from the ego. And it makes it a lot easier to understand when you are being humble and when you are wanting to be right and coming from ego.
What I loved about it is it says the kingdom of heaven is a spirit's right, whose beauty and dignity are far beyond doubt, perception, and stand forever as the mark of the love of God for his creations, who are wholly worthy of him and only him. So when we're in like our spirit out of our ego, it's like we become exalted, and when we are not, we become lost.
It's kind of interesting that the wording is, of your ego you can do nothing to save yourself or others. The fact that it's presuming that we could save others. Yes.
Well, for me, I think we try to save others all the time through the ego. A lot of people are completely preoccupied attempting to save others, but through the separated mind.
Right. Okay. Okay.
You know, there is a little bit of a, geez, what's the word? A dilemma for me, because if you look at, granted, it's not happening here, so I get it's not necessarily like a karmic obligation, and I don't feel pulled to do this, or else maybe I would feel it was a karmic obligation. But when you look at what's happening in Israel and how that could very easily spread into a world war, and you look at the rawness of it, and of course, you know, the ego wants to, you know, say, this is wrong or this is right, or and make a judgment, a value judgment on it. Nothing is ever solved that way. But yet, you know, there are people who are rushing to the aid of Israel, because I think, you know, personally, when I have felt something like that before, I felt like it was a karmic obligation for me to go. But if I don't feel that, not that people don't need help and there isn't things to be done to you know, that situation, I also know that it's kind of not my burden to carry. Whatever I would have to offer as far as my capabilities would certainly not be battling Hamas. So when we look at the ego's way of saving, it seems always as if it's done through a separated mind and generally causes harm somewhere else. Am I being too negative, or am I making any semblance of sense?
Yeah, you are, in that the ego only wants to serve itself. And so there's boastfulness and there's look at me. If the ego person thinks that they can save a situation or others, it's usually because they want to be self-aggrandized.
Well, also, I sit back and I think, you know, because the dilemma for me is there's something, you know, pretty horrific happened, and a lot of innocent people were like killed. There are, you know, there's rationalizations, there's non-rationalizations, there's no reason for this type of violence, and then there's people who are justifying that type of violence. And if you go into the fray of that, it's almost like there's no way out of it. There's no way to justify it. There's no way to exonerate it. And there's really not a viable way to repudiate it, or to try to correct the wrongs, quote unquote, that have happened. So my question myself is, you know, the position I've taken is not my karma, because I'm not there. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Arab. I'm very sad that had happened and people were brutalized. And at the same time, there's a part of me that sits back. I know this is going to sound awful, but I'm going to say it, is that when horrible things happen in the world, and in the context of the Course in Miracles, how do we perceive that? How do we give meaning to that? And in my position, I'm looking at it going, okay, if all is perfect in the eyes of God, meaning that people's bodies have been destroyed, suffering is occurring, the world's on the verge of war, and this would not be a popular perception for me to say, and all's perfect and all's right. When people say, are you insane? But at the very deepest part of me, I look at it and I go, if it's happening, then there is, in the context of time, in the context of how the matrix of karma works itself out, it wouldn't be happening if it wasn't at the perfect time in the perfect way. And there's a part of me that just completely rebels against that thought. But if I'm looking through the eyes of the atonement, that would be the meaning I would have to ascribe to it. But my human part of me is like going, oh, hell no, no. But the other part of me is looking at it going, if we're not our bodies, which is what the Course of Miracles always says. Now, granted, my ego is raging right now, and I'm thinking if someone was to come into my house with a machete, would I defend myself? Well, hell yes, I'd defend myself. Because I think I am my body. It's not like, oh, just take it because, oh, you're here and it must be perfect, slice away. I wouldn't do that. I don't think anyone on the call would do that. However, how do we frame these horrific things in the context of A Course in Miracles? How do we frame it outside the ego? How do we do that? I mean, I've got it framed in my way of looking at it, where I'm pretty comfortable. But I guess I'll revert back to what is her name? Byron Katie, which is the whole premise that if it's occurring, it's God's will, and if it's occurring, it's right. And how do I know what is like not really meant to be? If it's occurring, it's meant to be. And if that's happening, then there is more of a divine plan to it. And always in hindsight for me, and anything that's ever happened in my life that's been horrific, in hindsight, there was a magnificent jump in my awareness, in my spirituality, in how I saw the world. I don't know the meaning of what this period in history will bring humanity, will bring the Israeli people, or bring the Hamas people, or bring the Palestinian people. I mean, I have to sit back and go, if it's occurring, there is some purpose for it, and it's in the divine plan. That's what I kind of hold on to. But if I was living in Gaza right now, I don't think I could hold that. So I read this and I'm like, yeah, I totally get that. But I get number 12, I get what it says. But how do we frame these other things that occur if we're really going to live these principles of A Course in Miracles on a daily basis? Does anyone have any feedback on what my rant has just been?
So something that throws me off, Gary.
Yeah, so, I know.
If everything is all divine, done in God's will, why are we even discussing ego? Because if it's all done as God's will, then ego wouldn't even be a thing. So what throws me off is this war isn't God's war. It's a war of ego of man. It's somebody sending their people off to do whatever ill deeds that they want done. And that's not God's will. That's ego's will in doing so. And as for holding that vibration while somebody's wielding a machete in front of you, you would want to defend yourself. But if you could, you would. Oh, how did I saw something like I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ or something like that. And would that divine protection occur? Would that maniac just turn around and walk away? Would he not be able to slice you? Who knows? But it's where you would stand.
Yeah. V, do you have any insight as well? Thanks for that, Joey.
From reading this Course in Miracles as well, though, it doesn't, and I kind of have this image anyway of like God is not creating any of this war. The ego is creating all this stuff, but he just kind of, God or source or whatever, law of attraction, all of it is like you're asking for something. And God or source, he's just saying yes. Whatever you ask for, he'll just say yes, with no judgment, with no saying this is good or bad for you. This is what you want. This is what you get. And
I totally agree that God didn't create this. However, God created us. And our thought systems, our belief systems, our actions, the reactions that occur through the law of reciprocity is what has created all of this. So as a reflection of the divine, which each one of us is, whatever we're focusing on, we're creating the ramifications of that. And I keep going back to this thing of that we are the ones that have created a separation by our own thinking and our own actions. And the truth, the only way to get back to a more sacred way of living is to navigate through, and you guys are absolutely right. God didn't create this, man did. The only way to get back to a semblance of a sacred space is, again, coming back to the Course in Miracles, going to stop seeing divisions between people and start seeing the unification. And regardless of the ideology, which is where people get lost, I mean, religion is always, what is it? The birthplace of genocide and ultimate violence, because it deals only in separation. If we were to wipe off religion from the planet and have just the humanity and the spirituality and the love of God, this world would be a very, very different place. And perhaps then the only really recourse any of us have is to practice that within ourselves individually and in small groups of people like we are, to try to begin to start living that more on a daily basis and in our relationships, and have that be the thing that governs us. And slowly but slowly, other people will come along for that ride as well. And that's the only way that I can see how we navigate through the horrors of what human beings and what our ego has created in this. Oh boy, I'm going to say this. It's not very nice, but I'm going to say it. And sort of this shit show of the ego and the violence that ensues. It's. I get stunned. I remember when I was young and I was, I was doing drugs and I was, like listening to, Jimi Hendrix and Joan Baez, and, I was all hippied out and I was like, there's only love, people, and thinking that the world was really going to change. And I really believed it was going to change. And man, it has, and not for the better. So, but I do think that this is the only way home. This is the only way. Jane, do you have anything you want to share?
Yeah, I do. I think as humans with an ego intact, we're looking at this as, oh, this needs to stop today. And can we really appreciate the laissez-faire attitude of, well, the people of Hamas, they're taking baby steps. Everyone's taking baby steps in their evolution, their spiritual evolution. And from where we sit, it's not enough. But if we could see ahead 2 years, 22 years, 82 years, 102 years, could we possibly see the breadcrumbs that were dropped and the trail, and very possibly the spiritual growth? If we could hear the stories of of man reaching out to help man,
Mhm.
I think they're there. They're
I
just
think
not
they are
there in
there.
our time. And so we don't like that. And so we do pass judgment and say, yeah, but it needs to end now. It's like, no, that would not be in the course of a person's growth. It's not feasible to say that the the one who is in power with Hamas is just, it can grow. Yes, but in baby steps. And
Well, they
we're
are
not
baby
up for it.
steps. Yeah.
But yet, if the growth is there, the growth is there over the years. And who are we to say, oh, that's not good enough? Well, it's just more separation.
We're not going to solve it tonight for sure. I don't think it's necessarily solvable by the mind. And as I'm sitting here thinking about everything I said and what I was feeling, I keep coming back to this, that we do make progress very slowly, and we do it by constantly coming back to that place of there's no resolution at the same logical level. Like, you can't resolve war with more violence. It has to be done from a much higher perspective. And perhaps people at some point will reach the place where they look at the futility of war and begin to start creating more of a bridge to mutual understanding between the radical differences that exist, and the hatred can lessen, because that never resolves anything either. There's just no resolution through violence and through separation. And this is exactly what the Course in Miracles keeps speaking about, is that, and this is why that one line, where does it say, of your ego, you can do nothing to save yourself or others, but of your spirit, you can do everything for the salvation of both. And whether the people of Hamas are attempting to save the Palestinians from the incursion of the Israelis into their lands, or whether the Israelis are trying to save their people from the incursion of Hamas into their lands, it seems like nothing can ever really be resolved through the ego. And there still has to be negotiations, but there must be this sort of sense of mutual understanding and respect for human beings in general, regardless of their predispositions to believe anyway. There has to be a acceptance of the differences. Hopefully that will happen. Okay, I'll quit ranting.
Linda's joined us.
Hey, Linda. Looking
Hello,
gorgeous.
everyone.
Looking gorgeous as always.
Oh, Gary, you just set my ego afire, you do.
I'm just buttering you up, Linda.
I'm sure that's not the case at all. How is everyone? Good?
We're good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Oh, good.
Got a cooler day for gardening today, which is good, only 16 degrees.
Wow, that is cool.
Mm.
That's
Considering-
Celsius for the Americans, so that's more like maybe, I don't know, would that be like 30 degrees Fahrenheit? Gary, what do you think?
I can't do the conversion in my head. It feels like it's more in the low 40s.
Yeah, it'd be something like that. Yeah, it's mild, but it's not like
50
freezing
degrees.
cold.
It's not super cold, yeah.
Mm.
Or maybe mid 40s or low 50s, something like that.
Mm.
It's helpful when you're mulching.
Yes, yes. Shall we move
60 degrees.
Yes, let's go into the next one. Sorry, I derailed us.
No, that's not a derailment. It's perfect to discuss. We could power through and just read through all of this, but we're not going to get the same understanding as actually breaking it down and trying to apply it to our world.
Well, that's why I think it's so important. When we come to these long paragraphs that seem easy to understand, how does that apply to us? And what can we do with that in the context of what's occurring around us? Because I can say it's all perfect, and my neighbor just got murdered, and I can say, oh, well, isn't that perfect? Their soul was meant to leave. Very likely that is the ultimate truth of it all. But that does, I still feel like we're in a human body having a human experience, and we're going to have human emotions concerning it, and that's part of what I think we all are here to do. If we're aspects of the divine, we're here to experience it all. And it's because we're all interconnected, we can't dissociate ourselves from suffering across the world, because we feel it in our energetics. I know I do. I feel it, and I'm like, what do I do with that? So, yeah.
I'm gonna just add one thing that always keeps coming up for me too. It's like, yes, talking about energetics and frequency, reading David R. Hawkins' books, and the example that I've had from the last one, I'm still reading it, Map of Consciousness. And he gave the example of what happened with Gandhi and how he caused revolution with absolutely no violence, simply because he was operating in a higher frequency than the actual British Empire.
Yeah.
That's all it took. One man.
If you've never seen that movie, Gandhi, spectacular. You guys must watch it.
Yeah.
It's one of the best iconic films ever made, I think. It's beautiful.
And it's not like he did it on his own, but it was his frequency that brought everyone along with him to create a very non-violent outcome.
David Hawkins was very much like that in person. I had the great good fortune to study with him. And he would do a prayer to open up the training with. And literally you can feel the whole room kind of levitating. He raised the frequency in the room when he would pray to open up the trainings. It was very special, actually. He demonstrated what he believed and knew to be true. Yeah.
Still alive?
No. No, he's left the planet.
Who wants to read this one?
I'm voting on you, V.
All right. I will substitute for your ego if you wish, but never for your spirit. A father can safely leave a child with an elder brother who has shown himself responsible, but this involves no confusion about the child's origin. The brother can protect the child's body and his ego, but he does not confuse himself with the father because he does this. He can be entrusted with your body and your ego only because this enables you not to be concerned with them and lets me teach you their unimportance. I could not understand their importance to you if I had not once been tempted to believe in them myself. Let us undertake to learn this lesson together so we can be free of them together. I need devoted teachers who share my aim of healing the mind. Spirit is far beyond the need of your protection or mine. Remember this. In this world, you need not have tribulation because I have overcome the world. That is why you should be of good cheer.
The last line, I would like to, get everybody's feedback on this. In this world, you need not have tribulation because I have overcome the world. That is why you should be of good cheer. Now, I know the Course in Miracles does not promote or make that statement of, Christ died for your sins and therefore you're already saved if you just have blind faith in Christ, right? The Course in Miracles is opposite than that. But I think what that line's saying to me is that I've overcome the world, therefore you are equal to me and you can also overcome the world. And that, I just wanted to put in that clarification, because if someone who doesn't understand or have read the Course before would read that and go, oh, it's another reference to someone saying, follow me blindly, although you don't necessarily have a relationship with me, but follow me blindly. I just wanted to make that clarification.
I get the impression from reading this that just what you were saying there as well, Gary. It's not like following a stranger, because your spirit needs to connect with this higher power in order to be able to do this. And when you're just following a dogmatic script, that's not what's happening. It's actually sitting in that oneness and being connected to everybody, that it creates that kind of surrender and trust. But it's not going to happen from just reading spiritual texts or religious texts, or going to church, or following the rules.
I don't know about you guys, but it feels like there's something really important in here that I don't know if we're breaking down enough. And it says, a father can safely leave a child with an elder brother. So I think what he's speaking about is God can leave you in the care of the Christ consciousness with an elder brother who has shown himself responsible. But this involves no confusion about the child's origin. The brother can protect the child's body and his ego, but he does not confuse himself with the father, because he does this. So we don't confuse God with this, with the with Christ. I can be entrusted with your body and your ego only because this enables you not to be concerned with them and lets me teach you their unimportance, which is what the whole Course in Miracles is about teaching us the unimportance of our egos and our bodies. And then it goes, I cannot understand their importance to you if I had not once been tempted to believe in them myself. That makes sense. Let us undertake to learn this lesson together so we can be free of them together. And then it says, I need devoted teachers who share my aim of healing the mind. What does that say to you guys? I know what it's saying to me, but what does it say to you guys?
Jane's, yeah. Oh. Now you're muted.
You're muted, Jane. Unmute yourself.
I feel like, Gary, you said it best when you said and described to us how David Hawkins was and his influence in a room of people. Well, isn't this saying the same thing? That let us undertake to learn this lesson together so we can be free. I need devoted teachers who can share my aim of healing the mind. Our misfortune is that we don't think we're the David Hawkins of the world, but we are, right?
Yeah, oftentimes we don't think that we're the destined teachers to raise a vibratory resonance either. We think it's someone else, but actually it's us.
It's us. Mm-hmm. Right. And I feel like that's what you said tonight in describing him. Why don't we levitate right here, right now? Why don't we do that? Because we're not full of that belief. We're not with that belief. And that's the only difference. And that's what this is saying. I need devoted teachers. Yeah, we need to be devoted to ourselves. We need to be devoted to our spirit. so that we can vibrate, emulate, and take on the role that's of our own divinity, that's so connected to God's divinity. It's our thing. Again, the ego gets in the way. You're really not that special. You can't do that. Now, why would you think you could? Well, you could learn it. Oh, that's good, you're learning. But don't apply it. Don't feel it. Don't know it. Don't make it yours. And it's like,
I think you're right. It is about that extreme ownership of who we're evolving to be. I had a session today, and I taught a class last night for my coaching certification. And in the coaching certification, I'm bringing in all of these. I'm training NLP, but I'm also training the HNLP, the Humanistic Neurolinguistic Psychology. And I've scripted all these processes that I use consistently in my private practice to train other people to coach like I coach. And they're infused with spirituality. I mean, they're just infused with it. And what I know is that last night we were working, and we did like the spirit detachment process. We did another really interesting process that kind of elevated people. And I kind of looked out at the group, and there was just this extraordinary amount of love between us. And I think what it was that people were having breakthroughs, which was awesome. And then at the same time, it's like making a commitment to start working in the coaching industry with a higher logical level of how we can help people rise up. And I mean, rise up like through understanding others, through better communication skills, through resolving the trauma in their past, through looking out of a different lens at another person without judgment. And there's somewhere in the Course in Miracles that we'll come to at some point where it says, you walk hand in hand into heaven with your brothers and your sisters. And that's the only way you get to heaven, is hand in hand with your brothers and sisters. And I used to really ponder that. And I couldn't understand it because I kept thinking, oh, people are so screwed up. How are we all going to get there? Because I don't know how that will ever happen. And then it dawned on me that it has nothing to do with the physical aspect of it, but has everything to do with the psycho-emotional aspect of it. When I stop judging, that's when I enter heaven. When I stop condemning, that's when I enter a state of oneness, being able to see through the atonement or the eyes of the Holy Spirit. When I'm able to see that spark of the divine in another, minus what they do, minus what they say, minus their ego, then I enter a state of elevation. And if I can't do that, then I'm in judgment. I'm in some form of condemnation. I am doing something other than connecting and not seeing differences. It's the not seeing differences, it's that total acceptance that actually elevates our vibratory resonance. That's what does it. So then I got, okay, well then that makes total sense to me now. I walk hand in hand with my brother and sister into heaven by stopping the judgment, evaluation, and condemnation and comparison of my ego versus theirs, or my body versus theirs, or their wealth versus mine. It's like when you stop all that nonsense, your vibratory resonance raises. And if more people did that, like I just had my beautiful, beautiful Christian neighbor just come over. This guy, I don't have words for him. That's how beautiful he is. He came over, he planned this big thing that we were going to do, all our little neighborhood buddies. We're going to go to downtown Hot Springs, go to the light show out on this big, I've never been there, but to this big area that is just this fancy, beautiful gardens. Linda, you would love it. And go have dinner and go to the hot springs and get a massage and go into the tubs and all that. We were all going to do this together, it was totally fun. And then something happened. He said, I can't do it on that day. He came over here in tears. In tears, he goes, guys, I just really want this to happen. I want to spend this time with you guys so bad. Can you do it on the 19th instead of the 20th? And when we could, he cried. He had tears coming down his face. He says, oh my God, I'm so happy. God is great. He was praying over it all day. And I'm like, I love you, dude. I do not know what angelic realm you dropped from, but you dropped from some angelic realm, because he is the most loving person I probably have ever met in my life, and consistently so. Not just like, oh, once in a while I'm in a good mood, or once in a while I've, had a great meditation. He's always like this. Always. I do not know how he does it. And he's not your typical, he's a very devout Christian, but he's not what's the word? He's not a rule-bound Christian. It is like the love of God and all of creation. That is his religion. I've never met anyone like him, to tell you the truth. So I feel like I'm on holy ground when I'm in my neighborhood, And so what I know is he's living that. He is living it. And he is in love most of the time, if not all the time, in gratitude and in love and in devotion to God all the time. And he serves everyone he meets. And I'm thinking, a man to be modeled. So we have to start looking at, like, who are we in our own individual little lives with so much complexity happening around us? Joe's got his, dramas and people that will try to knock him off his pedestal of peace. I most certainly do. Linda's got her issues. Jane, I know you do. And Veronica, I know you do. And I most certainly do. So how do we navigate this idea of applying this one principle that if it's happening, it is of the ego in the three-dimensional world, but the only elevation and the only solution is to see the divine in it, to see the spark of love in it, to see people as the divine, not as their ego, not as their actions. Everything's either love or fear. So it's some iteration of fear that they're in. How do we love beyond that? Even though it's impacting us, how do we love beyond it? How do we see the other person in that light when their actions are causing us pain? How do we see it? How do we reframe the pain? But if we're going to be devoted teachers who share the aim of healing the mind, then this is what we're being asked to do. This is what we're being tasked to do. And I'm speaking to myself here because I love coming to this group, but I also know that we have to break down these paragraphs in a way that we make it applicable to us, and then make a commitment to start living that throughout the week. Because when we can do that, then we all kind of elevate. Then we become that devoted teacher who share my aim, or Christ's aim, of healing the mind. And then he says, spirit is far beyond the need of your protection or mine. So it really is our minds and our separate judgment that we wield night and day, 100 times a day, that we have to quiet down so our spirit can see actually itself in the eyes of another. And when we can do that, I think we begin to truly follow A Course in Miracles. I don't think A Course in Miracles is complicated. I think it's very, very simple. It says the same thing over and over and over again in a variety of different ways. But it always comes down to, we're not separate. We are the spark of the divine. We see a reflection of our divinity in the eyes of another, regardless of their behavior. And if we can do that, we'd walk into a room and people would elevate. And that would be awesome. Not because it's us, but because the work's being done then. Bill Thetford, the man who co-wrote the Course in Miracles, was like that. I will always remember those Friday evenings in San Diego in Hillcrest teaching A Course in Miracles to the AIDS community, and Bill would come in and just sit in the back of the room on the floor. He wouldn't sit in a chair just because he didn't want to take up a chair, because literally we'd have 50 or 60 people in that room, all going to be a skeleton in 3 months. And Bill would just sit in the back of the room and he would just hold the space and listen. Okay, I'll shut up. I don't have much more to say about that other than what I just said.
Want to say, can I say something?
Yes.
Sure.
You know, I think what we're really saying is the importance of the Course in Miracles is, and the importance of tonight or today, this morning for you, V, is loving the self, loving ourselves. Imagine if we could boost that. And let's take out the word if. Let's say when, as I'm in the process of loving myself more and more. Everything springs from that. The freedom that we get to have when we love ourselves. You know, what's
I like
your
that.
neighbor's name, Gary?
His name is Kurt.
Kurt. You know, I find myself from time to time, when I tell people about, you know, where you live, and I said, Annie's got this Christian neighbor that is just a beautiful soul and is so accepting. And it's so unlikely, so highly unlikely that this geographic area would give birth to this. Highly unlikely, but it's there. It's like, well, if it can happen there, where else can we make it happen?
Oh, it can happen everywhere. And the bottom line
Right?
is, yeah, absolutely. It can happen everywhere.
Yeah. So, you know, can we get fired up about being a Kurt? Can we get fired up about being ourselves?
It's true. There's this there's a thing on in Ho'oponopono, that process from Hawaii. And
Yeah.
at the end of it, it says, I love my imperfections.
Mm-hmm.
And I accept myself, and I love your imperfections, and I accept you.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom line for all of us is, we are in this human form. We have been imprinted and programmed by our ancestry and by our culture, and we can overcome all of it. It's not even a fact of overcoming. It's just a re-identification with something higher, to identify more with that rather than to identify with the programming. I've been working with a client recently, and he had literally identified with the suffering of his ancestry. And his whole thing was, I just have this long sense of sadness that no matter what I do or how my life is, I just feel sad. And I'm like, interesting. And we did some work, and he went back to the sadness originated with his great grandfather, who had come to America from Italy and had to leave his family and his children. His daughters he didn't see for 30 years. And because of the war broke out, World War II broke out, and it was really interesting when we got to the place where he finally realized that he didn't have to carry the constructs of his ancestry. He didn't have to be the construct of his programming, that he could actually be in this joyous state without guilt. And because he thought, if I carry this, I'm honoring my ancestry. And I'm curious how many of us will have done that. And when he got to that state, now it's like he laughs all the time. He's totally joyful. And it's like, Gary, I go out for walks and I'm crying because of the beauty around me. I'm like, yeah, because you're in love. You're in love with this thing called God, because you're finding it everywhere you look. And you're no longer identified as this wounded child from a wounded past. And when we stop that identification and we start looking at, then who are we? If we cannot be joyous for all literally the gifts we've all been given and however we've been given them, this is the time to have more joy, to see more oneness, and to celebrate that rather than our separation and our fear. So I have a challenge for us. Let's do our best to live this next week in gratitude and joy, and in celebration that we see the divine in the most magical places, from the frog on my window to the pine tree that get hit by lightning, to the fish in my pond, to people that I would not normally hang out with and sometimes don't want to hang out with and don't want to know, to the divinity in them, and let me celebrate it all. And if I can do that for a week, I'll feel very good. You guys up for the challenge?
Yeah, ready.
We might as well do this, Gabe, because we might as well come together as a group and say, let's actually practice this stuff. Let's see what we can do.
Sure.
Put it to work. Because I'm finding that as I put this to work for myself, I'm happier. I work out of issues way faster. And I feel more in love with life. And more importantly, I feel stronger inside myself. And that's everything I've ever wanted, is to stop being afraid of the unknown and walk into the future as if I was being carried by a divine force. Because, gang, I'm telling you, at the end of our lives, me being a little bit closer than most of you because of my maturing process,
Your number.
I will say that it is, that's what we're all practicing for. We're practicing for the leap into the void. And when we leap into the void, to go into it like it is our wedding day. And we are marrying our beloved. And race to the light. I'm serious. That's how I want my death to be. It's like I'm meeting my beloved. Yeah. The one I've pined for my entire life.
How exciting.
It can be. So I just think that, this is the time for all of us to, since we're doing this and we're committed to this, let's be committed to the actualization of it.
I love it.
Okay, so that's the challenge. Who's got their word? Are they aligned? I'm going to cheat tonight, by the way. B, you got yours?
Find and explore the connection everywhere.
Lovely. Who else? If you don't have it, you're going to have to ad-lib it.
Myself, and I'm in love with you.
Linda, what's yours?
Well, it's something that you said, Gary, and I really liked it. I love my imperfections, and I love your imperfections.
Yay. Joey?
Mine comes from that last paragraph. There was so much in there that came to light for me. But that last line, the last two lines, in this world you need not have tribulations, because I have overcome the world. That is why you should choose, or that is why you should be of good cheer. I can't read my own writing.
Awesome. Mine is something I've been looking at and saying all week. My kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is not of the ego, and it is not of the separated mind. And I'm claiming that as my kingdom now, my reality and the bubble I live in. Okay, gang, God bless you all. I love you guys, and I will see you next Tuesday, okay? And V, thank you always for organizing all of this. And hopefully this recording will get out there and people will listen to it and get some value. I'm hoping, because we get together and we chat and we goof around and we try to be smart, but you know, it's like ultimately, as we talk through these things, it'd be really beautiful if people got value from it as well, because ultimately, our confusion hopefully will add some clarity to other people as we get to clarity ourselves. So you all have a wonderful night, and I'm off to the store to get bananas and blueberries. And we'll see you guys later. Take care.
Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah,